Have you ever felt like you were betraying your mother just by acknowledging your pain? That maybe by admitting you were wounded, you were somehow being disloyal to the woman who gave you life? This silent conflict sits at the root of the mother wound, a wound that doesn't always bleed but always shapes. We live in a world that romanticizes motherhood as divine, pure, and instinctively nurturing. But what happens when your personal truth contradicts that sacred myth? What if the person who was supposed to protect you was emotionally unavailable, hypercritical, controlling, or simply too wounded herself to offer you the love you needed? What if your childhood was filled not with affection, but with absence masked as duty, or closeness laced with conditions? Many adults carry this emotional inheritance like a ghost in their nervous system. They smile in public, succeed at work, even raise families. Yet inside, there's a hidden ache, a subtle question. Why do I feel so unworthy of love? Society calls it being too sensitive. Family calls it being ungrateful. But Carl Jung would call it a fracture in the original imprint of the self, a rupture at the root, where the first bond with life went misunderstood. The mother is not just a parent, she is the first world the child ever knows. And if that world feels unsafe, cold, or conditional, the child internalizes that emotional climate as reality. You don't just grow up confused about love. You grow up mistrusting your own feelings, your own needs, your own sense of self. The mother wound doesn't always come from dramatic abuse. Sometimes it comes in a whisper, in the way your tears were ignored or your joy was too loud. Sometimes it comes from a mother who needed you to be her emotional caretaker before you even understood your own emotions. This kind of subtle reversal, the child emotionally parenting the parent, is one of the deepest betrayals of innocence. And yet, it's so normalized that many never question it until their relationships start to fall apart, or their anxiety becomes unbearable, or their inner child starts screaming louder than their adult self can silence. But here's the truth. This wound did not begin with you, but it can end with you. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What you've inherited can be transformed. This journey is not about blame, it's about awakening, about giving your inner child what she never received, permission to feel, to grieve, and to finally breathe. In this video, we'll explore how to recognize this wound in all its forms, loud or quiet, sharp or soft, and how to begin the alchemical process of healing it. Because when you heal the mother wound, you don't just change your story, you change your entire lineage. And somewhere deep inside, you already know it's time. Why does love always seem to hurt more than it heals for you? Why do you keep ending up in situations that feel like emotional déjà vu, abandonment, rejection, silence, over-explaining, giving too much, or being invisible in the very places you wanted to be seen the most? You think it's just bad choices or bad luck. But what if it's not your adult self choosing these experiences at all? What if it's a wounded inner child trying to resolve a pain that never got a name? You see, we don't repeat pain because we want to suffer. We repeat it because the psyche longs to finish a story that never had a real ending. Carl Jung called this the compulsion to repeat, an unconscious urge to relive unresolved traumas, not to torment ourselves, but to finally integrate them. If your story began with a mother whose love was unpredictable, who smiled but also shamed, who praised you but withdrew the moment you disappointed her, then your nervous system memorized love as danger. So now, even as an adult, you might feel safe with people who keep you on edge because that tension feels familiar. And in trauma, familiarity is mistaken for safety. You might find yourself in love with people who mirror the very traits that once wounded you, emotionally unavailable, cold, controlling, or inconsistent, because the psyche is trying to get it right this time. But that's the trap. You're not meant to finally earn the love of someone like your mother. You're meant to recognize that your worth was never dependent on it in the first place. This is where the invisible hand of the mother wound operates quietly behind the scenes of your adult life, not in the obvious memories, but in your triggers, in the way your stomach drops when someone pulls away, in how you overextend just to be chosen, in your silence when something hurts because you learned early that speaking up might cost you love. These aren't random traits. They are psychological survival patterns built around your first experience of emotional power, your mother. The pain deepens when society glorifies the mother-child bond as pure and sacred, leaving you doubting your memory, your pain, your truth. You may ask, was it really that bad? But the wound doesn't need to come from abuse alone. It can come from emotional absence, perfectionism, martyrdom, or silent resentment, a kind of love that starved you while appearing full to the outside world. And that's what makes this wound so complex. It hides in your achievements, in your perfectionism, in the mask you wear so no one sees how unworthy you still feel inside. It hides in your constant giving, your fear of being a burden, and your inability to receive love without guilt. You don't just fear rejection, you expect it. You don't just fear love, you brace for the moment it disappears. But what if this isn't the truth about you, only a reflection of what you had to become to survive? What if your pain isn't a flaw, but a map? Map back to the part of you that was never allowed to exist freely? When will you stop blaming yourself for wounds that weren't yours to carry? When will you give yourself the mothering you never received? And what kind of life might open if you finally did? What if the person you're in love with isn't really them, but the unresolved bond with your mother playing itself out through their face? It sounds shocking, even painful to hear, but the truth is, many of us are not choosing relationships. We're reenacting them. You're not just falling for someone who reminds you of love. You're often falling for someone who reminds your nervous system of home, even if home was unpredictable, cold, critical, or absent. That's the haunting power of unconscious attachment. It doesn't pull you toward joy. It pulls you toward familiarity, because your inner child doesn't seek happiness, it seeks what it knows. And what it knows is the mother who didn't meet you fully, the love you had to earn, the silence you had to interpret, the distance you had to chase. So you find someone who triggers the same wounds, and you call it chemistry, you call it passion, you even call it fate. But Carl Jung warned us long ago, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So many adults find themselves trapped in cycles they don't understand, chasing love that hurts, staying with people who trigger their deepest insecurities, pulling away from those who are safe. But beneath all of it is one thing, the internalized mother. Jung believed that the first psychic imprint of the mother becomes the basis of how we relate to the outer world. She becomes the blueprint, the original symbol of love, nourishment, and safety. But when that symbol is fractured, we spend the rest of our lives unconsciously trying to repair it through others. We date the cold man, hoping our warmth will finally melt him. We stay with the critical partner, hoping to earn a kind word. We fear abandonment so much that we abandon ourselves first. The mother wound doesn't just live in our memories, it lives in our bodies, it lives in our relationships, it whispers through our triggers, it breathes through our patterns. Have you ever felt terrified of someone pulling away, even when they're not that good to you? Have you ever found yourself chasing someone who makes you feel small just for the scraps of attention they offer? Have you pulled away from someone loving because their kindness felt too unfamiliar, too uncomfortable to trust? These aren't signs of your brokenness. These are signs of your programming. And programming is not your fault. But healing is your responsibility. Because here's the secret most people never tell you. You're not trying to win the love of your partner. You're trying to win the love of your mother through your partner. You're trying to rewrite a story that never got its ending. But your healing won't come from forcing someone to love you the way she couldn't. Your healing begins when you finally stop seeking your mother in other people and turn inward to remother yourself. So ask yourself, what kind of love have you been chasing your whole life? Is it warm? Is it safe? Or is it familiar in a way that still hurts? Can you tell the difference between what your soul truly desires and what your wound is craving? Are you ready to stop repeating the past and start reclaiming your future? Because once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. Once you see the mother in the mirror of your relationships, you can stop confusing pain with love. And once you choose to give yourself what she couldn't, the cycle finally breaks. Not through blame, but through consciousness, through love, through reparenting the child inside you who still waits for her. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself whose voice is living in your head? Is it really yours, or is it the echo of a mother who never truly saw you? Most people don't realize that long after childhood ends, the emotional wiring continues, quietly shaping every decision, every relationship, every moment of self-doubt. You grow older, but her presence remains. Not the woman herself, but the emotional ghost she left behind. And it's not always loud. Sometimes it's in the way you apologize too quickly, the way you dim your light so others feel comfortable, the way you push yourself beyond exhaustion just to prove your worth. This is the insidious reality of the inner mother. Jung believed that unless we confront the archetypal figures that live within us, we are fated to be ruled by them unconsciously. And for many, the mother wound becomes a dominant archetype, controlling, unseen, yet all-powerful. It doesn't matter whether your mother was neglectful, overbearing, absent, or even loving but emotionally unavailable. If you were left feeling unseen, unheard, or unheld, your psyche carries that wound like a coded script. And you will keep reenacting that script until you choose to rewrite it. That's why you might attract people who abandon you or stay in relationships where you have to earn love. That's why you feel guilty for setting boundaries or selfish for wanting peace. Because somewhere inside, the voice of the inner mother is still whispering, "Don't be too much. Don't ask for too much. Don't be difficult." And the worst part? You believe her. You don't even question where that voice came from. You think it's your own. But what if it's not? What if that inner narrative is just a survival response, a psychological adaptation you made to gain love in an emotionally unstable environment? Jung taught that true healing is not about blame, but about integration. It's not about vilifying the outer mother, but about recognizing the projection you've internalized and unconsciously obeyed. Because until you name the voice, you can't change the story. Until you meet the mother within, you will keep trying to fix the mother outside. And that, Jung warned, is how generations repeat themselves. So the real question becomes, are you parenting yourself or punishing yourself? Are you letting that wounded image continue to run your life from behind the curtain? Healing begins the moment you realize that the inner mother doesn't need to be fought. She needs to be reparented. She needs you, the conscious adult, to show up with the love, presence, and boundaries that were missing. Because that inner voice isn't trying to hurt you, it's trying to keep you safe, the only way it knows how. But you're not a child anymore. Now you get to choose. Will you continue living under the spell of her fear, or will you become the mother your inner child always needed? Will you stay loyal to pain, or will you risk stepping into peace? Let the old voice rise, then gently replace it. With truth, with presence, with compassion. That's how the mother wound begins to dissolve, not by running away from it, but by facing it with the courage and grace of the inner parent you were always meant to become. Have you ever wondered why certain moments trigger you so deeply? Why someone's silence can feel like abandonment? Or why a small disapproval can unleash a storm inside you? It's not just the present that's reacting. It's the child in you who was once unseen, unheard, and unheld. And more often than not, that child learned to survive by becoming what others needed, especially for the mother figure. This survival strategy wasn't a conscious decision. It was your nervous system adapting to emotional absence, inconsistency, or conditional love. What looked like obedience or being well-adjusted was actually an inner exile. You banished the parts of yourself that threatened your connection. This is the tragedy that few speak of. You didn't lose your authenticity because you were weak. You lost it because you were wise. Because as a child, love equaled survival, and rejection felt like death. And so you put on the mask. You became the peacemaker, the achiever, the caretaker, the good girl, or strong one. But inside, you were fragmenting. Every time you pushed down your truth to keep the peace, another part of your soul went silent. Every time you were praised for being mature for your age, you confused self-abandonment with emotional growth. Carl Jung called this outer mask the persona, the socially acceptable self that helps you function in society. But the more you wear it, the more the inner self gets buried. And then, beneath the persona, lies the shadow, not just the parts you judge as dark or bad, but also your suppressed gifts, your boundaries, your anger that signals injustice, your sexuality, your joy, your wildness. The shadow isn't evil. It's simply exiled. And the more you ignore it, the louder it becomes. It shows up in the form of rage that scares you, numbness that paralyzes you, or cravings that never seem to be satisfied. But none of this is random. These are symptoms of the mother wound, the pain of not being fully seen, soothed, or supported by the person who first mirrored your existence. The wound lives in the gap between who you had to be and who you really are. And if your mother couldn't fully love or accept herself, how could she reflect your wholeness back to you? So much of your adult pain may actually be the echo of a child still trying to earn what should have been freely given. The question is, how long will you keep betraying your truth to win a love that your soul no longer needs to chase? How long will you live your life through the lens of an old wound, mistaking emotional survival for wholeness? Jung reminds us that healing requires integration, not perfection. It's about becoming conscious of the unconscious. Seeing the pattern, not as proof you're broken, but as evidence that something deep is ready to return home. What if that panic you feel when someone pulls away is your inner child begging you not to be abandoned again? What if that overachieving voice is your old protector trying to earn safety? What if your exhaustion isn't laziness, but the soul's rebellion against the mask you're still wearing? The mother wound isn't just about her, it's about you. It's about reclaiming the self you had to bury to survive. And maybe the healing doesn't begin by confronting her, but by finally listening to the you who went quiet when love felt conditional. The mask cracks when truth emerges. The shadow softens when you hold it with compassion. And the wound begins to close the moment you stop apologizing for being real. So tell me, Who would you be if you didn't have to earn love anymore? Would you recognize the sound of your own soul? Or has it been waiting patiently behind the mask all this time? Have you ever asked yourself, who am I when I am not trying to make someone else proud? It seems like a harmless question, but for many raised by a narcissistic mother, it feels dangerous. Because deep down, you learned early on that being loved was never unconditional. You had to earn it. And that silent bargain shaped your identity more than you realize. The narcissistic mother doesn't always shout. She does not need to. Her control is subtle, often wrapped in kindness, care, and sacrifice. On the surface, she may appear loving, generous, and even admired by others. But at home, her child slowly becomes an emotional mirror, existing only to reflect her needs, fears, and desires. Her love sounds like, "I did everything for you," but it feels like, "You owe me your life." Praise comes like a drop of rain in a drought, brief, unpredictable, and always tied to performance. This creates a fragile world where love equals usefulness. You became her confidant, her emotional crutch, her trophy. You learned to shine, but not too brightly, to succeed, but not beyond her, to exist, but not in ways that threatened her sense of control. You were shaped in her image, and in doing so, lost your own. Carl Jung understood this dynamic deeply. He wrote that when the mother possesses the ego of the child, the self, the authentic, undivided identity cannot grow. Instead, a false self emerges, one constructed entirely around the mother's expectations. The child becomes the pleaser, the overachiever, the perfectionist, the rescuer. But underneath the roles, there is often a silent grief, a mourning for a childhood where love should have been freely given, not negotiated like a contract. This wound is not just emotional, it becomes biological. Your nervous system adapts to anticipate rejection, to detect disapproval in silence, to fear intimacy, because it always had strings attached. You may struggle to say no, to take up space, to ask for what you need without guilt. You live for others. You apologize for everything. You say yes when your whole body screams no. And yet, here is the truth. None of this is your fault. You were never broken. You were conditioned. The narcissistic mother teaches her child that survival depends on disappearing, and you did what you had to do. But survival is not the same as living. Now, it is your time to live. You do not need to keep waiting for her to change. The love you longed for cannot be earned because real love cannot be bought with sacrifice. The moment you stop chasing it, the healing begins. And this becomes even more vital when you have children of your own. Whether you are a mother or not, you are someone with the power to break a cycle that may have run for generations. Many women who carry the mother wound feel a quiet panic inside. What if I become her? That fear, as painful as it is already a sign of awakening, because those who repeat without guilt are still asleep, but those who fear repeating have already begun to change the story. No mother is unscarred. Most carry inherited pain they never chose. Some pass it on unconsciously. Others try so hard to avoid repeating the past that they lose themselves in the process. But the good news is that healing does not come through perfection. It comes through presence. When you begin to see yourself with compassion, when you allow your children to be who they are, not who you had to become, then the chain begins to break. You do not have to carry the entire weight of the past. You can lay it down piece by doing what no one did for you. You can say, "It ends with me." And that, just that, is a radical act of love. Have you ever asked yourself what would happen if, just for one day, You stopped chasing love and started remembering who you are? That question alone can unravel years of survival mode, because the truth is, your pain did not begin with you, but the healing can. And healing does not require a perfect past. It only asks for a present filled with intention. You cannot rewrite your childhood. You cannot go back and give yourself the mother you needed. But what you can do, starting today, is give yourself the space to feel what was never felt, to say what was never said, and to become who you were never allowed to be. That is the path of individuation. And it begins in the small, trembling moments where you choose to see the truth without turning away. Carl Jung taught that individuation is not the pursuit of becoming someone new. It is the sacred return to who you were before the world told you to be someone else. It is the homecoming of the soul. And for those of us who carry the mother wound, this path is not just a journey. It is a revolution. Because to break the internalized pattern of unworthiness, to no longer live under the shadow of a critical gaze, is to reclaim your very existence. You may stumble, you may want to run, you may hear the voice in your head whisper, "You're too much, you're not enough." But now you know where that voice came from, and knowing is the first act of freedom. Because awareness is the moment your story stops repeating and begins to evolve. You are not here to be endlessly molded by the pain of a wounded past. You are here to meet that pain with presence and to finally say, "I see you, but I no longer belong to you." Healing the mother wound is not about cutting someone out of your life. It is about releasing the hope that they will one day become someone they never were. It is about grieving the love you needed and never received. And in that grieving, something remarkable happens. You become the mother you always needed. You begin to speak to yourself with tenderness, protect your time and energy, and honor your needs without shame. You stop waiting for someone else to rescue you from the emotional abandonment you endured. You realize that the adult version of you is no longer helpless. She is powerful. She can rewrite the narrative. She can hold the child within and whisper, "I've got you now." And that is the most sacred reunion of all. This is not just healing. This is a transformation. This is stepping out of the role of the good daughter, the silent one, the overachiever, the emotional caretaker, and stepping into the wholeness of who you truly are. You are not broken. You are awakening. So here is your invitation, not to forget the past, but to no longer be held hostage by it. To look at your reflection and see someone worthy of love, safety, rest, and joy, not because you've earned it, but because you exist. That is enough. That has always been enough. If this message stirred something in you, it means the healing has already begun. Stay with it. Trust the unfolding. And if you're ready to take that next step, I want you to leave a comment below with the words, "I choose to set myself free." Let those words become your declaration, your anchor, your beginning. And if this video brought you clarity, comfort, or courage, please like it, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it. Because healing spreads when we no longer suffer in silence. This channel is a space for truth, for awakening, and for coming home to yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take a deep breath, place your hand over your heart, and remember, the love you've been waiting for is already within you. And now, it's finally time to receive it. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.